It's the Take Command Podcast. That's Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman. All right, Logan, there's a next group of three in terms of the quarterbacks that I think everyone's got in a different order. Michael Penix seems to be the guy that's in sixth, if you will, most places. And then it's pick your flavor of Bo Nix or J.J. McCarthy. I think Nix is probably would come in fourth in a universal rankings, then McCarthy, then Penix. There's some guys that love McCarthy. There's some guys that are like, I don't want to touch McCarthy with a 10-foot pole. Super wide variance there, which makes sense because there's only so much tape on him, which we'll get to in a second. How would you rank those three, though, and then we can get into them each individually in a more efficient manner than we did the previous three?
Yeah, if I was going to rank them, that's a really good question. I think, based on what I've been hearing from like NFL people, it seems like J.J. McCarthy is like definitively the fourth guy, for the
It does
league.
seem like he's climbing back up after Nick's had a couple of good weeks.
Yeah, and like I think it makes sense. Like when you watch him, I think when you watch him, like obviously there's not a lot to draw from there. There's not a lot of kind of like he throws. I think there was what was it? It was like over 3 games he threw for like 250, and like Bo Nix and Michael Penix do that like in a quarter. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like it's just like such a different evaluation. So you're like hunting and pecking and clawing and watching all this film for him. But I think the thing that you come out of it is like he has the arm talent, he has the ability. He's played in a very complicated pro-style offense already at Michigan, and I don't think he layers throws particularly well. I think he's a better athlete than people think, but he is very physically talented, and I think that's the thing that I keep forgetting about with the evaluation is I do this thing that's a binary yes/no, right? And so what it is just like physically, can they play the position at the NFL level? And so there's times where you're watching guys, you're like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know if he's fast enough or big enough or whatever. And I think McCarthy emphatically checks that box from like a tool standpoint. And so I think NFL coaches know that like they get him in the building, it's going to be okay. Now, if you're talking about film, like Bo Nix's film is way better. I think even Penix Jr.'s film is way better. But I think there's that he shows you enough of the physical traits to say, hey, I can be the fourth guy. Now, do I love that? Probably not, but I'm going to kind of lean to the NFL. I'm going to defer to the NFL in this situation because I'd probably have Bo Nix ahead of him. Might even have Michael Penix ahead of him, honestly, based on my evaluation. But I get what the NFL is talking about with him, and I think that's where I'm going to say, just like I understand it. Do I agree with it from a talent evaluation? Probably not, but I'm going to put him at 4 just for the conversation.
So but I want your rankings, like Scout Logan here. Scout Logan's going Nix, McCarthy, Penix, or Nix, Penix, McCarthy?
It's tough. It's really like these guys, this group is really hard, a little bit harder than the first group because I feel like, it's Caleb and then there's a camp for Drake May, and I understand that camp, and there's a camp for Jaden Daniels, and I kind of think if I were going to rank those guys, Caleb, Drake May, Daniels is probably how I'd go, and it's close, but I think that the passing ability of Drake May kind of makes that a little bit easier. This group is hard. Man, it is hard. It's like, what flavor of ice cream do you want?
Yeah.
Like, if you want a dude with a cannon arm that can, like, kind of touch everywhere in the field, it's Penix. But Penix can't make every single throw because everything's coming out like a freaking laser beam. He can't run around as much as you want. He's a true pocket passer.
What? That describes, like, he's like Byron Leftwich.
Yeah, but he's released. Like that, but
a much faster release. Yeah,
much faster release. Yeah,
but like Leftwich just threw darts everywhere. He stood back there. He wasn't mobile, and he just threw darts, and he didn't layer throws, and he just like that ball was coming through your chest plate, whether it was a 5-yard comeback or like a 25-yard dig. Like it was going to hit you between the numbers and knock your breath out.
And so there's definitely that element to his game. So you don't see a lot of like, oh, look at this nice touch throw like you get from Drake May or even Jaden Daniels. You don't get that from him. It's like Howitzer, deep ball. Here's Roma Dunze mossing somebody. Here's Pope jumping over a guy and making a contested catch. And he's great at those, and he's good at giving those guys opportunities. But if that's your flavor, take that flavor. Bo Nix, I think, does a much better job with like the 3 levels of the field. You got quick game, you got intermediate, you got deep stuff. Did they ask him to do a lot of the deep stuff? No, it was a lot of like quick screens. That Oregon offense is very kind of gimmicky in that way. Quick screens, slants. They got the middle of the field stuff, and he sees it, and he's very physically gifted from an arm and movement standpoint. He's very fast, much faster than I thought, much better athlete than I thought. So that's why I'd probably put him ahead of Michael Penix Jr. Excuse me. But I can see why that's my personal ranking. But I can see why someone would say, shoot, I like the guy with the howitzer over this guy who's in kind of this gimmicky college offense. Now, he does make all the throws. He's got the ability. I think the thing we forgot to talk about with the other guys, too, is that Bo Nix was bad at Auburn, like just not good. And then Penix has this crazy injury history. Same thing with Jaden Daniels. Like Jaden Daniels has 14 amazing games, and then when you look at Drake May, he's got 28 amazing, like really good games. You know what I'm saying? So like the body of work.
Daniels at ASU, not super special.
Right, probably a 4th round pick, maybe a 5th round pick, and now we're talking about maybe top 5 pick in the NFL. So, but that's what I think about Bo Nix. I like Bo Nix's film a little bit better, but then he goes down to the Senior Bowl, struggles a little bit. You don't see it quite be as dynamic as you were hoping for. So I'm a little gun shy after that, but I'd probably go him, Penix, and then I would probably go McCarthy. And again, that's my ranking because there's just not a lot of stuff to make decisions on. Like when it's the same thing. If you watch McCarthy's highlight tape, you're like, oh, this is for sure an NFL quarterback. Then you watch a game, you have to watch a couple games with him. You watch like 3 or 4 games with him, and you're like, there's an inconsistency to his play that is a little alarming. But in terms of tools, he's probably got the best tools, like consistent tools of the bunch. And I think that's why people in the NFL are higher on him.
Yeah, I think the age thing also becomes really interesting because Penix and Nix are older. McCarthy's 21, which also gives you hope for the body type because he's 6'3". Like, I mean, his weigh-in is actually huge for him in Indy. If he weighs in at 220 or 215 even, then you're like, oh, he's going to be QB4. Yeah. Like, done. Like, not done, but like...
He's going to run well. He's going to jump well.
He's going to run well. He's going to jump well, all that stuff. So he's most recently listed, a Google search tells you that he's 6'3", 203. Yeah. That is small.
Not a big guy, right?
Yeah. At 6'3", you need to be weighing more than 203 to play NFL quarterback. Like that's a yikes. And he looks thin. Like when you watch him out there, you're like, that's not a big dude. So if he comes in at 215 and you're like, well, he's 21 years old. By the time he's 23, by the time he's the age of these other guys, he'll be 225 and it'll be fine. Like, cool, we're done. Like we're now what is he as a talent? And with that worry gone, see ya. And so I think it's a big week for McCarthy. He's going to interview really well. You know that, obviously he can take really high-level coaching because Harbaugh was his guy at Michigan. I think there's a lot to like there, but I think talking about that, the age and maturity and the consistency and all those things, I think we talked about it some with May in that first group. I think McCarthy obviously is the outlier here, where the other 2 guys are 23. I think they both are currently, and McCarthy is only 21.
Yeah, and I think the other thing just to point out is the TCU game last year. They had to throw the ball a lot because the game flow got a little crazy, and I think he threw a pick. But you see that ability just to kind of touch all spots of the field. It feels very NFL starter-ish in terms of his command and his composure. So, and they're playing TCU, so take that for what it's worth. But I think that, like when I talk to NFL people, they say, "Oh, watch that TCU game." And I get it. When you watch a TCU game, you get it. But it's like that's one game out of the last couple of years. But again, very talented guy. But again, for me, it's probably Bo Nix, Penix, and then him. But I totally understand the NFL's perspective. If you guys are at home, Google the TCU game, watch it. Let me know what you think in the comments. But that's a big element for him. And then I think the physical tools are also really sharp. And then to get the endorsement from Harbaugh too, I think is also kind of a big deal. So.
Yeah, for sure. Going to be an interesting week for all 3 of those guys, for sure. And then obviously the pro days and all that kind of stuff. And then I think we'll start to get a better sense through some of the mock drafts and stuff, just how high that QB4 is going. Like, are we talking about 3 quarterbacks in the top 3 and one of them goes? I mean, Matt Miller's first. I think Matt's changed off of this now, but like his first one, he had McCarthy going like 7.
Like, well, right now, 8 is the spot everyone's saying, right?
Yeah, Atlanta. So could you see that, or are we talking about 13 in Las Vegas? Or are we talking 16? Like, because if all of a sudden McCarthy goes 8, let's say, like, are all 6 of these dudes going in the first round? Like, it becomes very possible very quickly, and that obviously I would say is great for the Commanders because it bumps other players down. Yeah. But I mean, it's who knows.
Yeah, and I also think that trade back scenario is really interesting too, like with Atlanta specifically for Washington. And people say, oh, well, we need a quarterback, but I just saw a recent kind of projected trade value for for the Commanders, not for the for Atlanta to go to 1, and it was three first round picks, 3 second-round picks over the next couple of years of drafts, and that is an organizational, windfall in terms of your ability to kind of build through the draft. So maybe Washington trades, they pick that guy. Maybe it's McCarthy or Bo Nix or whatever it looks like. Right. So I think it's important we address those guys. I think it's too high for both those guys. And quite honestly, like I could even see like Jaden Daniels slipping to 8 in some weird universe. Like after the combine comes out, interviews are done, like he slips to 8. Maybe that works out. But I think like it's important to note that we're talking a lot about quarterbacks here. But I do think because of the value of Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, there is a lot of potential draft capital that could be returned here. And then we're talking about one of these 3 guys is maybe the guy they're going with for the season. So,
and I think that just comes down to like how much more do you like those top guys than these guys? Because if it's not that much, then you should trade down. Like, and we'll talk about those situations.
To me, or it's even the value. If the value's crazy, if someone's giving you 3 firsts and 3 seconds to move up that many spots,
unless you think that you secretly think that one of these dudes is Mahomes, because there's you could trade, hey, Kansas City, I'll give you my next, how many are we allowed to trade? I'll give you that for Mahomes. They're going, no, absolutely not. Right. So it just depends. But I tend to agree with you. And again, it's like, okay, if my QB3 and QB4 aren't that different, cool, let's trade down.
Right.
So we'll see.